Let me close everything here and let me go inside of the search page.tsx. And I want to give this div, which has a class name of p-6, also space-y-4. So it has a bit of more separation between categories and the course itself. There we go. So this looks much, much better now. And you can play around and you can create as many courses as you want, publish them, and they're going to be visible in the browse page right here. Great, great job. Now we have to create this page, which when we click on a specific course, currently yields 404. So the way I want to create this page is I want to break from the normal layout. So I don't want to have this navigation bar and I don't want to have this sidebar. So let's take a look at where we have that sidebar. As you can see, that is coded right here inside of our route group dashboard. So we have this layout right here, which renders that navbar and that sidebar. So in order for us to break from this design, we have to create another organizational folder. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder inside of the app folder like this. And I'm going to add parentheses and I'm going to name this course like this. And inside of course, I'm going to create a new folder called courses like that. And then I'm going to create another folder, course ID, in square brackets. And let's create a new file inside page.tsx. And let's just export it. So course ID page with a div, watch the course. It doesn't really matter for now. And if you try and click now, what's going to happen is that, as you can see, we just have a plain text watch the course and we completely broke from our layout because that's exactly what we want. We're going to create a custom layout for this course. So let's go ahead now and let's go inside of this course ID page and let's create a new file, layout.tsx, like this. So let's go ahead and let's just write const course layout like that. And let's return, let's write export default course layout, just so we don't forget that. And let's write a div, and we have to import the children from the props. So children, let's give them a type of children to be react.react node, like that. And let's just render the children like this. There we go. So no more errors, but nothing has changed as well. Great. So now we can also extract the params from here. And since we are working inside of course ID folder, our layout is going to have that course ID inside of the params. So let's add params to have a course ID, which is a string like this. Perfect. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and fetch the course which we are trying to load. So for that, let's mark this entire layout as an asynchronous function. And let's go ahead and let's import database from @libdb. And while we are here, let's already prepare the out. So import out from clerk.next.js. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fetch my user ID. So const user ID is equal to out, which we imported. And if we don't have the user ID, we're going to return redirect from next/navigation to the root page. So I'm just going to move this import to the top like that. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and let's fetch our course. So const course is equal await db.course.find unique, where ID is params.courseID, like that, include has chapters, and we're only going to include chapters which are published, like this. Great. And we're also going to go ahead and include user progress inside of those chapters. So include user progress, but only the progress for the currently logged in user. So where user ID is matching, like that. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to order them. Let me just find where. So not here. Oh, right. So we're going to order the chapters like this. So outside of include, order by position ascending. Great. So the order by is for the chapters object. So make sure it is inside of this chapters area. And we're going to order them by their position in which we reorder them in our form, if you remember. So we want them to display in the correct order. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's write if there is no course, we can return redirect to the root page like this. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and let's get the current progress. So const progress count is await get progress from actions get progress. So make sure you import that. And we're going to load the progress user has made on this course using the user ID and the course ID like that. Now we have the progress count. Perfect. So let's give this div a class name of h-full like that. Let's go ahead and let's create a main element for this children. And let's give it a class name of md pl-ad and h-full like this. And now above, create a div with a class name of hidden, but on md it's going to be flex h-full w-at flex-call fixed inset-y-0 and z-50 like this. And now let's go ahead and let's render course sidebar inside like this. Let's pass in the course and let's pass in the progress count, which is going to be progress count like this. And of course, we are getting an error because course sidebar doesn't exist. So now let's go inside of the course ID and create a new folder underscore components like this. And inside create a new file course-sidebar.tsx like this. Let's go ahead and let's write export const course sidebar like that. And return a div saying sidebar like this. Go back to the course layout now and import the course sidebar from /components course sidebar. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to see anything unless we expand the screen and then we can see sidebar because it's hidden on mobile devices. We're going to have a navbar which is going to be able to open it just like on our usual layout. So if you want to see what you're working with, I highly suggest that you zoom out your code or expand the screen so you can see this text sidebar because we're going to style this now and render the chapters. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to zoom out a lot. You probably can't even see how small this text is, but this is enough for me to know that I have a sidebar here and I'm going to start working inside. Perfect. So now we have the errors for the props we were passing to the course sidebar. Let's go and let's create an interface. Course sidebar. Let's give it a course. Actually, let's name this course sidebar props. Let's give it a course option, which is a course type from Prisma client. And we're going to extend it by accepting chapters. And that chapter is going to be open parentheses and write an array. And let's go ahead and write chapter, also from Prisma client. And let's go ahead and give it user progress, which is the type of user progress from Prisma client like that. Add an array at the end or null. Great. So now that we have that, let's also append the progress count, which is a number. Great. Now let's add those props here. So course sidebar props like that. Let's extract the course and progress count. Great. So as always, let's try and fetch our user ID. Const user ID from auth, import auth from clerk next.js. If we don't have the user ID, return redirect from next/navigation to the root page. Make sure you have the import right here. Great. Now let's attempt to fetch the purchase. So I'm trying to find the purchase for this course. Const purchase is equal to await db.purchase and make sure you import db. So I added that from add/lib/db and I'm going to separate the imports. Await db.purchase.find unique. And as you can see, I'm getting some errors here. That's because I have not marked the course sidebar as an async function. Make sure you do that. Now go back inside of the purchase, await db purchase find unique, where. And now I want to show you a little trick. So in our schema right here, if you find the purchase, let's find where it is. So it's right here. And let's see if maybe I'm actually missing something here. So what I'm expecting to see, yes, I'm missing something. So in this purchase, I want to make sure that we have a unique a combination of user ID and the course ID, because I don't want it to be possible that user can purchase a course 2 times. So I'm gonna add a new index here, a new decorator here, add unique, like that. And I'm gonna pass in the user ID and the course ID, like this. So I want a unique combination of those. Perfect. And let's also go ahead. So the same way I added it with the user progress, like I forgot to do that. So you want to do it the same as in the user progress. And that's all the places we need this add unique. So I forgot to add it in purchase. So I'm just doing a quick sweep if I should add it somewhere else, but I think this is fine. So just make sure that in your purchase model, you add unique, user ID and course ID and save schema Prisma. And then let's go ahead and let's run npx Prisma generate. Make sure you shut down your app and then npx Prisma db push. Wait for a second to this to be sent to PlanetScale. And it seems like, all right, so if there are existing duplicates, this will fail. So we can just ignore those warnings. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We are not working with any production data here. We can always reset our entire database if needed. And once you do this, so you can just confirm if you get this warning, just press yes and do npm run dev. And you can just go ahead in your npx Prisma Studio just to confirm that you're not getting that you didn't lose your data. So let's see if that happened. Perhaps we lost our data now. So I'm just gonna go and paste this. Let's zoom in. All right, now it seems to still be here. Great. So if you're seeing no information about your categories or about your chapters or courses, you have to seed your categories. So let me just show you an example if you lost your data somehow. What you have to do is run node scripts seed.ts like that. And then you have to go and create your own course with a published chapter. So just in case that happened for you, but if you follow this tutorial exactly as I am, you will just probably get this warning and you're going to continue to develop. Perfect. And now what we're able to do here is a unique query because we just added those 2 fields to be unique. So we can write user ID underscore course ID like that. So we can work with this unique query now and pass in the user ID and course ID to be course.id like that. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's render this sidebar. So I'm going to give this div a class name of h-full border right flex-call overflow-y-auto shadow-sm. All right. Let me remove the sidebar text, create a new div inside, which is going to hold the h1 element, which is going to render course.title like that. So let me zoom back out and let me just refresh my localhost. So make sure to refresh your localhost if you run npm run dev again. And there we go. Now I have a text which says advanced web development in my sidebar. Let's give this div, which is holding our h1 element, a class name of padding 8, flex-call, and border bottom. Now to the h1 element, give it a class name of font-semi-bold. Great, now it says advanced web development here. Now we're gonna skip here. I'm just gonna write a comment here, check purchase, and add progress. And instead, I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna create a new div, and I'm gonna write class name flex-call w-full. And in here, course.chapters.map, get individual chapter, and I'm going to render course sidebar item like this. Let's give this course sidebar item a key, which is chapter.id, ID, which is chapter.id, label, which is chapter.title, is completed, which is going to be a boolean chapter.user progress question mark dot first in the array question mark dot is completed. Course ID, which is going to be course.id and is locked, which is going to check if the chapter is not free and if we don't have a purchase of this course like that. Great. Now let's create the course sidebar item component. So go inside of the same folder and create a new file, course-sidebar-item.psx. Let's go ahead and mark it as use client. Let's export const course sidebar item. And very simply return a div saying course sidebar item. Now we can go back to the course sidebar and import it from the very same folder because they are together right here. All right. And now let's add these props. So go back to course sidebar item, create an interface, course sidebar item props. Label is a string, ID is a string, is completed is a boolean, course ID is a string, and is locked is a boolean. Now let's map those props right here. Course sidebar item props. Let's extract the label, ID is completed, course ID is locked. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's add some path names here. So some hooks here. So const path name to be use path name from next/navigation. Let's also import use router while we are here. Now we can add that const router is equal to use router. Now let's define the icon. So const icon is going to be checked if the current chapter is locked. So if is locked, we're going to display the lock icon from Lucid React. So make sure you add this import for the lock icon like that. Otherwise, we're going to open another conditional inside of parentheses where we're going to check whether we completed this chapter or not. So if it's locked for us, we are not going to display any icon besides lock. But if it's unlocked, if we purchase this chapter, we're going to check whether we completed it. So is completed, check circle from Lucid React. Otherwise, play circle from Lucid React. So make sure you have check circle, lock, and play circle from Lucid React, and make sure you have this function where we dynamically change the icon. Okay. Let's go ahead now and let's write const is active to be path name question mark dot includes the current chapter ID. And now let's write const on click to be router.push open backticks / courses / course ID / chapters / individual chapter ID. Great. And now let's finally style this. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this div with a button like that. And I'm going to go ahead and write a div inside. Inside of this div, I'm going to render the icon, which we define right here. And I'm going to give it a label below it like that. And then you can see I have a lock icon here and I have the introduction text here. Great. So let's just modify this a bit. So I'm going to give this button a type of button. I am going to give it a class name of CN. So import CN from libutils. I'm going to separate it from the other imports. Let's give it default classes here. So right here, I'm going to write flex items dash center gap dash x dash 2 text dash slate dash 500 text dash small font dash in square brackets 500 pl dash 6 transition dash all hover text dash slate dash 600 hover bg dash slate dash 300 / 20. So those are our default classes. Now let's write our classes if we are actively selected on this chapter. So is active text dash slate dash 700 bg dash slate dash 200 / 20 hover bg dash slate dash 200 / 20 and hover text dash slate dash 700. So we don't want any change in hover for the is active route. Now let's write is completed text dash emerald dash 700 and hover text dash emerald dash 700. Now let's write if we both completed it, And if it's active, in that case, render a class name bg-emerald 200-20. Great. Let me just expand this a bit so we can maybe see better. All right, so you can see how I have a gray little box here, which I can click on now. And now let's go ahead and give this div, which wraps our icon and label a class name of flex items-center gap-x-2 mpy-4. Let's give this icon size of 22 and a class name of cn, default class name of text-slate-500 is active. Give it a class name of text-slate-700 is completed, text-emerald-700. Great. And below that, outside of this div encapsulating our icon, create a new div with a class name cn again, and this is actually going to be a self-closing div like this, ml-auto opacity-0 border-2 border-slate-700 h-full transition-all is active, is going to have opacity 100, is completed, is gonna have border-emerald-700 like that. And now let's add this on click to the button on click like that. Great. So now I'm gonna expand this, I'm gonna zoom in, and there we go. You can see that now we have our chapter right here. And if I click on it, we get a 404 page. Perfect. So what we have to create now is a navbar, which is going to open this sidebar right here on mobile mode. And it's also going to hold a little exit button so we can go back to the list of all courses. Let's go back inside of the course layout. So it's right here. Let me just close everything so you can see. So inside of our parentheses course folder, courses, course ID, and in here we have a layout file. So go inside of here, and above this div encapsulating our sidebar, create a new div with a class name of h- in square brackets 80 pixels, mdpl-80, fixed in set-y-0, w-full, and z-50. And let's also give our main element pt- in square brackets 80 pixels. Now go back inside of this div and render course navbar. Pass in a course as a prop and pass in the progress count as a prop as well. Let's create the course navbar now. So inside of underscore components, create a new file, course-navbar.tsx. Go ahead and export const course navbar and return a div saying course navbar. Go back to the layout, and now you can import that from /_components course navbar, the same way we did with the sidebar. But course navbar is visible on mobile mode as well. So now let's create an interface for the course navbar. Course navbar props. Course is going to be a course. Let's just import course from Prisma client. Great. And now we're going to write chapters. Open parentheses, write an array, and write chapter from Prisma client, and open an object, user progress, to be user progress type from Prisma client, and an array or null. And also add progress count to be a number. Let's assign these props to the course navbar props. Course navbar props, and let's extract all of them. Course and progress count. Perfect. Now that we have that, let's create a class name here, p-4 border-b h-full flex items-center vg-white shadow-sn. And inside, I'm going to remove this text, and instead I'm going to render navbar routes from add/component/navbar/routes. So make sure you have that imported, and there we go. But we have a problem now. So this is saying teacher mode. What I wanted to say is exit. So we're gonna have to revisit our navbar routes. So let's go and find them, navbar-routes. They are in our global components folder. What I wanna do is I wanna find where it says is player page. So it's right here. Oh, this is actually okay. So this is gonna work for us. Technically, we can already add it to be to /courses. We could technically do this and then it still works, right? So if you want to, you can change it to /courses, or you can keep it as /chapter. So I got confused. Because what we're gonna do with our courses page is that we're gonna immediately redirect to the first chapter. But actually, it might be even better if we wrote /courses, right? This actually makes more sense. So the player page is whenever we are on the /courses page, and now even if we don't select our chapter, we have the exit button, right? So perhaps that is even better. Yeah, you can change this is player page to /courses, right? Or you can also rename this from is player page to is course page, like this. Perhaps it makes more sense to you. I call it player because what's gonna happen here is, well, the player, right? We're gonna immediately redirect to the first active chapter and display the player. But if you want to, if it makes more sense to you, you can name this is course page. And then if we are on the course page, we need to have an exit button in our navbar so we can go back to, well, to the home screen, right? So I can go back here, and then when I click again on the advanced web development, I'm back inside. All right. Now what we have to do is we have to create a mobile sidebar component so we can render the chapters here. So let's go back inside of the course navbar, and what we're going to do is above the navbar routes, we're going to render a course mobile sidebar component, which we don't have yet. We're going to pass it the course, and we're going to pass the progress count. Great. Now we have to create the course mobile sidebar component. So in the same folder, create course-mobile-sidebar.tsx. Go ahead and import menu from Lucid React. Go ahead and import chapter, course, user progress from Lucid, from @prisma/client. Great. Import sheet, sheet content, and sheet trigger from add/components UI sheet, like that. And also import course sidebar from /course sidebar. Now let's go ahead and write interface course mobile sidebar props. And what we can do is we can just copy them exactly from the navbar. So they're exactly the same. So you can just paste them here. And now go ahead and write export const course mobile sidebar. Okay, course mobile sidebar. Map the props, course mobile sidebar props. And go ahead and extract the course and progress count. And all we're gonna do is add our sheet component, the sheet trigger component. Inside of the sheet trigger component, we're just going to render the menu icon which we imported. Let's give the sheet trigger some classes. Hidden on medium devices, because our sidebar is gonna be visible then. PR-4, hover, opacity-75, and transition. Below, let's add the sheet content, and let's render the course sidebar. And let's give the course sidebar a course and progress count. And let's now add class name to the sheet content to have P-0, BG-white, W-72. Let's also give it an attribute of side left. Now you can go back to the course navbar and you can import the course mobile sidebar from /course mobile sidebar and save the file. And it seems like I forgot to write return inside of the course mobile sidebar, so make sure you write return like that. There we go. Now I have a little icon here, which, as you can see, opens my progress, my chapters. Perfect. So we finished the layout for our chapters. Now what we're going to do is we're finally going to create the player view here and the enroll button so we can finally purchase this course. Great job. What we have to create now is the individual chapter page. So when we click on introduction, for example, we don't want a 404, we want an actual chapter page. So in order to do that, let's go ahead inside of our course ID folder right here and create a new folder called chapters. So chapters, and inside of chapters, you're gonna create another folder in brackets, chapter ID. And inside, create a new file, page.tsx. And let's do our shortcut SFC chapter ID page. And just render chapter ID. Great. And now, let's try and click on introduction again. And there we go. Now it says chapter ID. And you can see how this one now has a nice little bar to indicate that it is selected. Great. So what I want to do now is I want to show you how to reset your entire database with Prisma, just in case something went wrong in the previous part where we modified our Prisma schema and got that warning that some of our chapters might be deleted. So I want to show you how you can manually reset the entire setup. So I'm going to close all of my terminals here. And I'm going to go ahead and run npx prisma migrate reset. So you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I just want to teach you how to reset your entire database with Prisma. So always do this in development, right? You don't want to do this in production with live users. So what I have to do here is confirm this by pressing Y, and now all of my data will be deleted from the database. And then let's go ahead and run npx prisma db push. So you have to run db push after you reset your entire database, so you push the collections back to PlanetScale or whatever you are using for your MySQL solution. And then you can npm, actually let's not run npm dev already. First thing we have to do to start generating our database from the beginning is run node scripts seed.ts, because this is going to generate our categories. And then you can do npm run dev. Perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit this. So yeah, you can just refresh your page and go to localhost, and you should not have any courses in the browse page. So I'm gonna go inside of teacher mode and I'm gonna create a new course, for example, advanced web development. And inside of this course, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna finish all of this, and I'm gonna create a couple of chapters and publish all of them. So I added these 4 chapters right here, and I marked introduction as a free chapter. Right here, I selected this checkbox. So I recommend that you do this as well. So have at least 3 or 4 chapters so you can develop this. And let's publish this entire course now. There we go. And now we can go back to the browse page in here. And there we go. I have my course. So what I want to do next is that when a user clicks on this course right here, right now they are redirected to this page where it just says watch the course. What I want to do is to immediately redirect to the first chapter, which would be the introduction chapter. So let's do that. So I'm gonna go back and find my course ID page. So go inside of course in parentheses, courses, course ID, and find page.tsx inside of the course page. Let's go ahead and extract the params from here. So params, and I'm going to map them to params, which is an object that holds the course ID string like that. So I know that because it's inside of the course ID folder. All right, now let's import db from /lib/db, And also let's import redirect from next/navigation. Inside, I'm gonna go ahead and attempt to fetch the course. So const course await db.course.findUnique, where id is params.courseID, include chapters where is published true, and let's also order chapters by their position. So position ascending. As you can see, I have an error in my await function, which means I have to mark the course ID page as an asynchronous function. I'm now going to write if there is no course, return redirect, which we imported back to the root page. And instead of returning anything from the elements here, we're going to return a redirect again, open backticks to /courses /individual course.id /chapters /course.chapters, the first one in the array .id, just like that. And now, if you take a look, I'm gonna go and exit this, and I'm gonna go inside of my browse page. When I click on a specific course, I'm immediately redirected to the introduction. And you can see how introduction doesn't have a lock icon. That's because we have a function in our course sidebar item which checks whether it should be locked or not. And since I marked this one as free, it doesn't have a lock icon. And since I have not purchased this course and other chapters are not marked as free, I have a little lock icon. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's finally start creating our player right here. So let's go back inside of the chapter ID page. So page chapter ID, whoops, let me just close everything so we can find it again. So app folder, course ID, chapters, chapter ID, page.tsx. Now inside, first thing I'm going to do is mark this as an asynchronous function. And then I'm gonna go ahead and extract the params from here. So params, and let's give them types. So params inside of chapter ID page hold both the course ID and the chapter ID. So let's write course ID to be a string and chapter ID to be a string as well, because we have both of those. Let's now extract the user ID from the out function using clerk_next.js. If there is no user ID, return redirect from next/navigation back to the root page. Great. And now what I want to do is I want to write a function called getChapter. So let's go inside of our actions folder and create a new file, get-chapter.ts. Let's go ahead and write an interface, getChapter props, user ID, which is a string, course ID, which is a string as well, and chapter ID itself, which is a string. Export const getChapter is an asynchronous function which has the getChapter props inside of the props here. Let's extract the user ID, the course ID, and the chapter ID. Let's open the arrow function, and let's open a try and catch block right here. First, let's resolve the catch one. So I'm gonna go ahead and write console log getChapter with the logged error, and I'm going to return an object with chapter to be null, course to be null, max data to be null, attachments to be an empty array, next chapter to be null as well, user progress is going to be null, and purchase is going to be null. Great. And now let's go in the try block and let's actually fetch all of these items. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to prepare my imports so we can just focus on fetching the data down there. So first let's import the database, and then let's import attachment from Prisma client and chapter from Prisma client. And now let's go back inside of the try block. And first thing I want to do is I want to see whether the user purchased this course or not. So const purchase purchase like that, await db.purchase.findUnique, where a combination of user ID and course ID matches. So user ID and course ID to be course ID. And don't forget to put equal sign here. So you can do it like this, or you can use a shorthand like that. And it's not an equal sign, my apologies. It's colon like that. Great. So we have the purchase now. Now let's attempt to fetch the course. So const course await db.course.findUnique, where is published is true and ID matches the course ID. And let's select price to be true. Now let's go ahead and fetch the chapter. So const chapter await db.chapter.findUnique, where the ID is chapter ID and is published is true. If we don't have a chapter, or if we don't have a course, let's throw new error chapter or course not found. Now let's attempt to fetch mux data, attachments, and the next chapter. So let mux data is null by default. Let attachments is a type of attachment and an array. By default, it's going to be an empty array. Let next chapter is a type of chapter or null, and default value is going to be null. And now we're only going to fetch these things if the user purchased the course, right? So if we have a purchase, which we loaded right here in the beginning, right here, only then are we gonna go ahead and load the mux data to play the video, the attachments that the teacher provided, and the next chapter to redirect the user to. So let's write attachments are equal to await db.attachment find many, where course ID is course ID. Now let's go ahead and let's go outside of this if clause for purchase, and let's check if chapter is free or if we have a purchase. And now we're gonna get the mux data. So mux data await db.muxdata.findUnique, where chapter ID is chapter ID from the props. Next chapter, also inside of that if clause, is going to be await db.chapter.findUnique, find first, where course ID is course ID, is published is true, and position is greater than the current chapter position, right? So we want to load the next chapter by position, and order by, this is also important, position ascending. And last thing we're going to do is we're going to fetch the user progress. So outside of this if clause, const user progress await db.userProgress.findUnique, where user ID and chapter ID combination matches. So user ID and chapter ID. And then what we have to do is write return chapter, course, mux data, attachments, next chapter, user progress, and purchase. Great. So now we are ready to go back inside of our chapter ID page. So let's go back here. All we did so far was add a redirect. And now let's go ahead and write await get chapter. And let's pass in the user ID, chapter ID to be params.chapter_id, course ID to be params.course ID. And let's import get chapter from @actions get chapter. I'm going to separate those. And let's extract chapter, course, mux data, attachments, next chapter, user progress, and purchase. Excellent. Now let's see if we successfully got that or not. So if there is no chapter or if there is no course, return redirect from next/navigation, which I think we already have here, to the root page. Yes, we already have the redirect. Great. Now let's write const is locked to be if chapter is not free and if we don't have a purchase. And now let's write const on complete on end if we have a purchase, and we're going to do that by adding 2 exclamation points, which is going to turn this into a boolean, right? So if we have a purchase and if user progress is completed, like that. This is supposed to be end-to-end. So we're going to use this to trigger autocomplete when the video finishes or not. So this is going to be our our clause for that to happen. Now let's go inside of the return function. And inside of this div, first thing I want to add is a banner. So let's write user progress is completed. So if that is true, we're going to render a banner, which we already created. So import that from add/components banner, just like that. And we're going to give it a label, you already completed this chapter. And we're going to give it a variant of success. Now we're not going to see anything here. That's because we have not completed this. So let's copy and paste this. And let's change this if clause to be is locked. In that case, we're going to write warning. And we're going to write you need to purchase this course to watch this chapter. Great. And let's see if we can already see that. So right now we are in introduction. So that is free. That's why we don't have that warning. Now let's click on getting started and let's refresh and see. There we go. You need to purchase this course to watch this chapter. You can see how it says that on the locked ones. But if I go to introduction, it doesn't say that because I marked introduction as a free chapter. Excellent. Now let's go ahead below this. Let's create a div with a class name of flex-call max-w-4xl mx-auto and pb-20. Inside, we're going to open another div and give it a class name of padding4. And here, we're going to render our video player component, which we're going to create. Let's give it a chapter ID of params.chapter_id. Let's give it title of chapter.title. Course ID to be params.course_id. Next chapter ID. Next chapter ?.id. Playback ID. Max data ?.playback ID. Is locked. Complete on end. Great. And now we have to create this video player component. So inside of chapter ID, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder called _components and a new file video-player.tsx. Mark this as use client. Let's import Axios from Axios. Let's import Max Player from Max Player React. Let's import use state from React. Let's import toast from React Hot Toast. Let's import use router from next/not router but navigation. Let's import loader2 and lock from Lucid React. So we have some icons. Let's import cn from libutils. And let's import use confetti store from @hooks use confetti store. Now let's write an interface for this video player props. Interface video player props has a playback ID, which is a string, course ID, which is a string, chapter ID, which is a string, next chapter ID, which is an optional string, is locked, which is a boolean, complete on end, which is a boolean as well, title, which is a string. And now let's write export const video player, and let's add those props here. So this is a type of video player props. And let's extract the playback ID, the course ID, the chapter ID, the next chapter ID is locked, complete on end, and title. So everything that's written in the props. Excellent. And now what I want to do is I just want to return a div, a div, which is just going to say video player. And now let's go back inside of page.tsx and let's import the video player from /components video player. And in order to fix this, we can just add an exclamation point at the end because the TypeScript has specific logic, but we know that it's gonna be here, right? Because we won't allow this chapter or this course to be published if we don't have a working playback ID. All right. Now inside of here, let's write a class name, relative aspect dash video. Below that, let's write if it's not locked, a div with a class name absolute inset dash 0 flex items dash center justify dash center bg dash slate dash 800, and inside a loader 2 element which we imported, and give it a class name of h-8 w-8 animate spin and text secondary. Great. Now you can see we have a little loader here, and of course you're only gonna see this if you are in a free chapter, so make sure you're inside of a free chapter or create one if you don't have it. Below that, we're gonna write another cause for is locked. So if we are locked, we're gonna render a similar div, so class name absolute inset dash 0 flex items dash center justify dash center bg dash slate dash 800 flex dash call gap dash y dash 2 text dash secondary. Inside, render a lock icon with the class name h-8 and w-8 and a paragraph. This chapter is locked, and give a paragraph a class name of text dash small. And now let's try clicking on a locked chapter, and there we go. This one says this chapter is locked, but the introduction one is still loading. Great. What I want to do now is I want to add some states here. So I'm gonna go here and add const is ready, set is ready to be used state and default value of false. And now let's use this is ready alongside of this is locked right here. So I'm gonna write if it's not ready and if it's not locked, then we're gonna display the loading animation. Otherwise, if it's locked, there's no point in displaying the loading animation because we are never gonna load the player because it doesn't have the necessary attributes, right? And now below this, add if it's not locked, go ahead and render a mux player, which we have imported, with the title of title, class name of cn, with and let's just write if it's not ready, it's gonna have a hidden class name. And then on can play, set is ready is gonna become true. And on ended, for now, it's just gonna be an empty function, and also write auto play. Great. And let's see if we missed something. We did. We need to add a playback ID here. So playback ID to the mux player. And there we go. As you can see now, you can refresh, it's loading, and then here we are with our test video from Mux. Perfect. Great job. As you can see, you can play around with this player. So Mux is a really high quality player. You can also change the quality and you can even explore the documentation for so many other things that you can do. But what is very useful for me right now is, well, firstly, the video processing, which can handle videos up to 10 hours and more, right? Which is extremely good if I want to create my own course platform. As you can see, my videos are very long, and I love that Mux can process those long videos. And of course, we have additional actions. For example, once the video reaches its end, I want to redirect to the next chapter. So we're gonna work with that as well. Great. So we're gonna stop here, and then in the next part, we're gonna add the enroll button, the title, the attachments, everything that we need to purchase the course. Great job. Let's go back inside of chapter ID page. So right here, I believe, there we go. So chapter ID, where we render the video player. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go outside of this div, which is encapsulating the video player, and add a new div. And inside, let's add another div with a class name of p-4 flex-call md flex-row items-center and justify-between. And let's write h2 chapter.title. Let's give this h2 element a class name of text-2xl font-semi-bold and margin bottom of 2. Great, so on mobile devices is going to be centered, but if I expand my screen, it's right here, like that. So I'm just gonna move it back so I can see more of my code. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go below this h2 element and I'm gonna write, if we have a purchase, in that case, for now, I'm gonna add a comment to do add a course progress button. Otherwise, we're gonna go and we're going to render the course enroll button. Now, of course, if I save this, we're gonna get an error. So we're gonna create it right away. Let's just pass it some props. Course ID, which is gonna be params.courseID. And let's pass it price, which is course.price, and put an exclamation point at the end. And let me just see if I maybe have to render something here. So I'm gonna render a div. Yeah, we have to render something here. And inside, I'm just gonna add a comment to do add course progress button. So we have to render at least a div here. Great. And now let's create the course enroll button. So inside of these components where we have the video player, create a new file, course-enroll-button.tsx. Let's mark this as use client. And all we're gonna do is export const course enroll button and return a button from components UI button. And we're gonna write enroll for, and then we're going to import format price from add/lib format. And inside, we're gonna paste the price, which we're gonna get from the props. And we're also going to get course ID itself, right? So let's prepare the interface. Course enroll button props, price, which is a number, and course ID, which is a string. And now we can assign those props here. Course enroll props, like that. And all right, I think this is good enough for us to go back to the page and just import this. So make sure you import it from /components course enroll button. Great. And let's go ahead and let's just give it a class name. W-full, on medium devices, W-auto. So there we go. On mobile devices, it's gonna take the whole screen, but on desktop, it's gonna be to the side like this. And I also wanna give it a size of small. Great. There we go. So we finished this button. Now, of course, we're gonna go back and it's actually going to open the Stripe checkout page. But for now, let's go back to page.tsx so we can render the attachments and anything else we might need. All right. So first thing I'm gonna do is gonna into the, not ports. I'm going inside of terminal and I'm gonna write npx shatcn-ui at latest add separator. Go ahead and confirm the installation. And after it's done, npm run dev and refresh the localhost. All right, so now that we are outside of this course enroll button, go outside of this div, which is encapsulating the chapter title and the course button, and go below it, and you can just write a separator from add/components UI separator. So don't accidentally import it from Radix. So let me just see, there we go, and I'm just gonna move it to the top. And there we go, you can see how I have a small line here now, which is, well, a separator. Below this separator, let's open a div, and inside, let's render a preview component from add/components preview. So make sure